The rain wasn't just falling. It was trying to scour the world clean. It came down in thick, grey sheets, whipped into a frenzy by a wind that had forgotten the meaning of mercy. For Captain Ilara Vance, hunched over the steering wheel of her aging sedan, it was the final, sodden insult in a month that had been a masterclass in misery. Her windshield wipers beat her frantic, losing rhythm against the deluge. The road ahead was a blur of bleary red taillights and oily reflections. She was still in her army combat uniform, the digital grey pattern feeling heavy and damp even inside the car. The flight back from a 9-month deployment in a dust-choked country had been a 30-hour ordeal of bad coffee and stiff seats. All she had wanted was the quiet, familiar sanctuary of her small, empty house, a scalding shower, and the profound silence of being truly alone. Instead, the universe had thrown a monsoon at her, and now this. A dull, rhythmic thumping from the front passenger side tire. A flat, of course it was a flat. On a deserted stretch of county road, 10 miles from her town, with the ghost of desert sand still in her boots, Ilara pulled over onto the muddy, narrow shoulder, the car shuddering to a halt. She sat for a moment, her forehead resting against the cool steering wheel, listening to the hammering of the rain on the roof. A profound, bone-deep weariness threatened to swallow her whole. She was a soldier, trained for IEDs and ambushes, yet a simple flat tire on a rainy Tuesday felt like a defeat, with a sigh that seemed to come from the soles of her feet. She pushed the door open and stepped out into the storm. The rain immediately soaked through her uniform, the cold a sharp, shocking contrast to the stale air of the car. She trudged to the trunk, her boots sinking into the soft ground, and popped it open. The spare tire looked depressingly small, and the jack. She wrestled with it, her cold, slick fingers struggling to get a proper grip. For 10 minutes, she fought a losing battle. The lug nuts were rusted on, sealed by time and weather. She put all her weight on the wrench, but it just skidded off, bruising her palm. She was strong, capable, but this was a different kind of fight, one of leverage and corroded metal. A wave of frustrated tears, hot and shameful, mixed with the cold rain on her face. She was home, but she felt more helpless than she had in a war zone. That's when she saw the headlights, an old, battered pickup truck, its paint faded to the color of the sky, slowed and pulled over ahead of her. A knot of tension tightened in her stomach. A lone woman on a deserted road. Her training kicked in, a low-grade hum of alertness. She subtly shifted her stance, her eyes tracking the driver's side door. It opened, and a man got out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, clad in a worn flannel shirt and jeans that were already dark with rain. He didn't approach her directly, but stood by his truck, holding up a hand in a universal gesture of peace. "Need a hand?" he called out, his voice deep and steady. Cutting through the drumming rain, Ilara hesitated, her soldier's caution warring with her utter desperation. "I'm okay," she shouted back, the lie tasting bitter. He took a few steps closer, but kept a respectful distance. He had a kind, weary face, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours and worries. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead. "Look, ma'am," he said, his gaze flicking to her uniform. "Captain, it's no trouble. I've got a better jack in my truck, and an impact wrench that'll eat those lugs for breakfast. 5 minutes, and you'll be on your way. Faster than you can call a tow truck that'll charge you a week's pay." Something in his tone was genuine. It wasn't predatory or patronizing. It was just, helpful. The last of her resistance crumbled. She nodded, a quick, sharp gesture. "Okay, thank you." His name was Leo, he said, as he retrieved a heavy-duty jack and a formidable-looking electric wrench from his truck. He didn't ask questions. He didn't make small talk about the weather or her service. He just got to work, his movements efficient and practiced. The whine of the impact wrench drowned out the rain for a moment, and one by one, the stubborn lug nuts gave way. Ilara stood under the feeble shelter of a nearby pine tree, watching him. He worked with a quiet competence she respected. He had the calloused hands of a man who worked with them, and a quiet intensity in his focus. As he knelt in the mud, the rain soaking him to the skin, she noticed a small, faded tattoo on his forearm, an old, military-style anchor. A veteran, maybe. It explained the lack of fuss, the immediate understanding. True to his word, it took less than 5 minutes. He had the flat off, the spare on, and the lug nuts tightened with a methodical precision. He stood up, wiping his muddy hands on his already soaked jeans. "All set," he said, a faint smile touching his eyes. "The spare's a little low, but it'll get you home. You should get to a gas station and air it up proper, though." "I don't know how to thank you," Ilara said, the words feeling inadequate. "Really? You saved me." "Just paying it forward," Leo said with a shrug. He gathered his tools. "You get home safe now, Captain." He was back in his truck before she could even offer him money for his trouble. He gave a short, friendly wave and pulled back onto the road, his taillights soon swallowed by the grey curtain of rain. Ilara stood there for a moment longer, the cold forgotten, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. It was a small, unexpected kindness, a flicker of light in her dark and weary homecoming. She got back in her car, the interior feeling suddenly safer. She drove the rest of the way home slowly, the thumping of the spare tire a comforting rhythm compared to the ominous flapping of the flat. She made it to her house, a small, tidy bungalow at the end of a quiet street. The silence inside was profound and welcoming. She took her shower, the hot water washing away the grime of travel and the chill of the storm. She ordered a pizza, ate it standing over the kitchen sink, and fell into a dreamless, heavy sleep. The image of the kind stranger in the rain, the last thing on her mind. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next week was a blur of reintegration. There were debriefs at the base, medical checkups, and the strange, disorienting process of adjusting to a world that had kept turning without her. The silence in her house, once a comfort, began to feel loud. It was filled with the ghosts of a life she'd put on hold. Her plants were dead. The milk in the fridge was a science experiment. The familiar felt foreign. It was on a Thursday, a week after the flat tire, that the memory of Leo resurfaced. She was cleaning out her car, a task she'd been putting off, and found the flattened, ruined tire in her trunk. Guilt prickled at her. He'd been so kind, and she hadn't even properly thanked him. She remembered the name he'd given her, Leo, and the town he'd mentioned he was heading back to Cedar Brook, a small community about 20 miles away, on a whim. An impulse born of gratitude and a desire to connect with that fleeting moment of human decency, she decided to find him. It wasn't hard. A few searches online for handymen or contractors in Cedar Brook led her to a small, independent operation, Mackenzie's Repairs. The website was simple, almost rudimentary, but it listed a phone number and a service area. And the owner's name was Leo Mackenzie. She called the number, her heart beating a little faster than it should for a simple thank you. A young boy's voice, high and clear, answered the phone. Mackenzie's Repairs. This is Sam speaking. How can I help you? Ilara was taken aback. Oh, hello, Sam. Is Leo available? Dad's under a sink right now, the boy said with the serious authority of a seasoned secretary. Can I take a message? Just tell him. Tell him the soldier with the flat tire on Route 9 called to thank him again. My name is Ilara, okay? I'll tell him, bye. The line went dead. Ilara smiled, charmed. So, Leo was a dad. It fit, somehow. The quiet patience, the nonsense competence. She thought that was the end of it. But the next day, her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Peering through the peephole, she saw a young boy, no more than 8 or 9, holding a small, slightly lopsided ceramic pot with a succulent plant in it. He had a shock of unruly brown hair and Leo's serious eyes. She opened the door. Hello. Are you Captain El? The boy asked, his voice formal. I am. I'm Sam. My dad said you were a hero, so I brought you this. He thrust the pot towards her. I made it in art class. It's for helping our country. Ilara's throat tightened. She took the pot carefully. The succulent was a little jade plant, and the pot was painted a bright, cheerful blue, with lopsided yellow stars. It was the most beautiful thing she'd seen in a long time. Thank you, Sam. That's incredibly kind of you. Please, come in for a moment. You're getting wet. Sam shook his head. Dad's in the truck. He said just to drop it off and not to bother you. He pointed to the street, where Leo's familiar pickup truck was idling. Leo was watching from the driver's seat, and he raised a hand in a wave identical to the one he'd given her in the rain. Well, you tell your dad he's no bother at all, Ilara said, her voice thick with emotion. And thank you, Sam. This is the best present I've gotten since I came home. Sam beamed. A gap-toothed, triumphant smile, then turned and scampered back to the truck. Ilara placed the jade plant on her kitchen windowsill. It looked right. It looked like it belonged there. A small, living thing in her quiet, sterile house. She found herself thinking about Sam's serious little face, and about Leo raising a son alone, running a business, and still stopping to help stranded soldiers in the rain. A few days later, her kitchen sink clogged. It was a stubborn, greasy blockage that refused to yield to plungers or chemical drain cleaners. Without a second thought, she found herself dialing the number for Mackenzie's Repairs. Again, Sam answered. Mackenzie's Repairs, Sam speaking. Hi Sam, it's Ilara again. The soldier. Is your dad available? My sink is... Well, it's throwing a bit of a tantrum. Leo came by that afternoon. He arrived exactly on time, his tool chest in hand, and got to work under the sink with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown with her tire. Ilara made him a coffee, which he accepted with a quiet thank you. Ma'am Sam, who had come along, sat at her kitchen table, coloring in a book with intense concentration. He's a good kid, Ilara said. Leaning against the counter, Leo's head was under the sink, but his voice was clear. He's the best. My little partner. The repair was quick. Leo emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. All clear. You had a nasty grease plug down there. Should be good for a while. As he was packing his tools, Ilara worked up the courage. Leo, please, let me pay you for this. And for the tire. You wouldn't let me then, but please. He shook his head. Not necessary. Captain Ilara. Please, call me Ilara. She took a deep breath. Then let me make you dinner. You and Sam, as a thank you. For everything. Leo looked at her, his gaze thoughtful, as if assessing her sincerity. He glanced at Sam, who had looked up from his coloring, his eyes wide with hopeful curiosity. You don't have to do that, Leo said softly. I know I don't, Ilara replied. I want to. A slow, genuine smile spread across Leo's face. It transformed him, making the weary lines around his eyes crinkle into something warm and alive. Okay then. We'd like that. Thank you, Ilara. That first dinner was a quiet, slightly awkward affair. Sam was shy, Leo was a man of few words, and Ilara was out of practice with casual socializing. But the food was good, and the act of breaking bread together forged a fragile bridge. Sam, emboldened by a second helping of chocolate cake, started asking Ilara questions about the army. She told him, sanitized, funny stories about the goats that would wander into the base, or about learning to drive a massive truck. He listened, rapt. Leo mostly listened to, his eyes flicking between his son's animated face and Ilara's. She saw a deep, abiding love there, and a loneliness that mirrored her own. After that, a tentative friendship began to bloom. Leo would stop by sometimes, on his way home from a job, just to check if she needed anything fixed. Ilara found herself inventing small repairs, a sticky window, a loose doorknob, just to have an excuse for their visits. She started joining them for pizza on Friday nights. She helped Sam with his history project on World War II, bringing over books and maps, her own knowledge adding a layer of reality that his school books lacked. She learned about Leo's wife, Sarah. She had died from a swift and brutal cancer when Sam was just 3. Leo had been a welder in the shipyards, but after she passed, he needed a job with more flexibility, something that would allow him to be there for Sam. So he started his handyman business. He worked long, hard hours, but he never missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference. Ilara, in turn, began to open up. She told Leo about the stifling silence of her house, about the disconnect she felt, the nightmares that sometimes jolted her awake, convinced she was back in the dust and noise. She didn't go into graphic detail, and he didn't press, but he listened in a way that few civilians could. He understood trauma, even if it wore a different face. One evening, they were in her backyard, and Leo was showing Sam how to properly hammer a nail. Ilara watched them, a strange, tender ache in her chest. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the scene. Leo's large, capable hand guiding Sam's small, fumbling one. The concentrated frown on Sam's face. The thump, thump, thump of the hammer, sound of building, of creating, not of destruction. She realized, with a jolt, that this was what she had been fighting for. Not for flags or politics, but for this simple, profound domesticity. For fathers to teach their sons how to hammer a nail in the peace of a backyard. For the safety of a quiet street. For the chance to build a life. She was falling in love. With both of them. With Leo's quiet strength and unwavering decency. With Sam's earnest, curious heart. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Months slipped by. The seasons turned. The jade plant on Ilara's windowsill grew new, bright green leaves. Her house no longer felt empty or silent. It felt expectant. It felt like a home waiting for a family. It was a crisp autumn evening when Ilara heard the knock. It was a firm, familiar sound. She opened the door to find Leo standing there, still in his work clothes, his face pale and etched with her anxiety she had never seen before. Sam was standing slightly behind him, clutching his father's hand, his little face a mask of fear. "Leo, what's wrong?" Ilara's heart plummeted. Had something happened? "Ilara," Leo's voice was hoarse, strained. We need to ask you something. It's a big thing. The biggest, of course. Anything. Come in, please." They stepped inside, the comfortable familiarity of the space, doing little to dispel the tension. Sam wouldn't meet her eyes. Leo took a deep, shaky breath. "It's about Sam's grandmother. My mum." "Sarah's mum," Ilara nodded, gesturing for him to continue. She'd heard little about Sarah's family. Leo had said they'd drifted apart after her death. The grief too sharp a wedge. "She never approved of me," Leo said, the words tasting bitter. "Thought Sarah married beneath her. When Sarah got sick, they had a falling out. A bad one. They hadn't spoken in years when she died. She never even met Sam." He ran a hand through his hair. "She lives across the country, wealthy, powerful. We got a letter from her lawyer today. She's filing for custody of Sam." The world tilted. "What?" Ilara whispered, disbelief choking her. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I'm an unfit father," Leo said, the words clearly quoted from the legal document. "That I'm a struggling handyman who can't provide a stable home. That I move him around in a rust bucket truck. That he doesn't have a traditional family structure. She's using everything. My income, my living situation. The fact that I'm a single dad." Sam started to cry, silent tears tracking down his cheeks. "I don't want to go with her, Ilara. I don't know her. I want to stay with Dad, and you." The end you shattered Ilara's heart into a million pieces. She knelt down, pulling Sam into a tight hug. "You are not going anywhere, Sam. Do you hear me? We are not letting that happen." She looked up at Leo, her soldier's mind clicking into gear, assessing the threat, formulating a plan. The weariness and fear in his eyes was a gut-wrenching sight. This man, who had faced down every challenge life had thrown at him with quiet courage, was terrified of losing his son. "What do we do?" Leo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ilara stood up, her back straight, her gaze steady. In that moment, she was every inch the captain. "We fight, Leo. We fight with everything we have." And they did. The following weeks were a nightmare of legal battles. They found a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Angela Cruz, who took one look at the case and grimaced. "It's an uphill battle," she warned. "Grandparents' rights are tricky, and she has deep pockets. She's painting a picture of instability. We need to build a fortress around you, Leo. We need to show the court that Sam's life here is not just stable, but full of love and support." The grandmother's legal team was ruthless. They deposed Leo's neighbors, asking if they ever saw the boy looking unkempt. They subpoenaed his financial records, highlighting every lean month. They hired a private investigator who took pictures of Leo's modest house and his old truck. Through it all, Ilara was their rock. She used her own savings to help pay for the legal fees. She attended every meeting with the lawyer, her presence a calm, steadying force. She wrote a sworn affidavit detailing her own observations of Leo's parenting, his devotion, his patience, the happy, well-adjusted boy Sam was. She testified to the loving, supportive environment Leo had created against all odds. One evening, After a particularly grueling day of legal strategizing, Leo broke down. They were in her kitchen, the same kitchen where Sam had given her the jade plant. He put his head in his hands, his broad shoulders shaking. "I can't lose him, Elara," he sobbed, the sound raw and painful. "He's all I have left of Sarah. He's my whole world." Elara went to him, wrapping her arms around him. "You won't lose him," she said, her voice fierce with conviction. "You are the best father I have ever known. The court will see that. I will make them see that." The custody hearing arrived, a cold, formal affair in a wood-paneled courtroom that felt nothing like a place where a child's future should be decided. Elara sat in the front row, directly behind Leo, her uniform pressed sharp, her back ramrod straight. She was a soldier going into battle for her family. Leo's mother-in-law, Eleanor, was a stern, elegantly dressed woman with cold eyes. She testified about her daughter's mistake in marrying Leo, about her fears for her grandson's future, about the opportunities she could provide that Leo never could. Then it was Leo's turn. His lawyer, Angela, led him through his testimony. He spoke of his love for Sarah, of his devastation at her loss, and of his unwavering commitment to his son. He talked about starting his business from scratch, about the long hours, not for himself, but for Sam. He didn't paint a picture of a perfect, easy life. He painted a picture of a real one, built on love, hard work, and resilience. The grandmother's lawyer cross-examined him, his tone condescending. "Mr. Mackenzie, isn't it true that your business is, at best, marginally profitable? It provides for our needs. And your truck, the one young Samuel is transported in, it's over 15 years old, is it not?" "It's reliable," Leo said, his voice steady. "And you live in a two-bedroom house in a neighborhood with underperforming schools." "We live in a community. His teacher, Mrs. Gable, has been a blessing. He has friends there." The lawyer paused, a smug look on his face. "And your current living situation? You're not married, are you? You have a roommate." "Captain Vance." Leo's jaw tightened. "Captain Vance is a dear friend. She has been a tremendous support to me and to Sam. A dear friend who lives 20 miles away and spends a significant amount of time at your home. Doesn't that strike you as an unstable, unconventional arrangement for a young boy?" Before Leo could answer, the judge, an older woman with a keen, intelligent face, interrupted. "Counselor, the court is more interested in the quality of the relationships than their conventionality. Please move on." Finally, Angela called Elara to the stand. She swore to tell the truth, her voice clear and confident in the quiet room. "Captain Vance," Angela began, "you are a decorated officer in the United States Army, is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am. And how did you come to know the Mackenzie family?" Elara told the story. The flat tire in the rain, Leo's unhesitating kindness to a complete stranger, Sam's gift of the jade plant, the friendship that grew slowly, rooted in mutual respect and a shared understanding of loss. She spoke not as a soldier, but as a woman who had found a family when she least expected one. "Would you describe the home Leo has created for Sam as unstable?" Angela asked. "No," Elara said, looking directly at the judge. "I would describe it as the most stable, loving home I have ever been in. Leo has taught Sam about integrity, hard work, and kindness. Sam is a happy, secure, and deeply loved little boy. To remove him from his father's care would be an act of profound cruelty." The grandmother's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He tried to rattle her, asking pointed questions about her deployments, her own lack of children, implying that her relationship with Leo was a recent development of convenience for the sake of the case. Alara met his gaze unflinchingly. "My service has taught me to recognize character," she said, her voice cutting through the lawyer's bluster. "Leo Mackenzie has more character in his little finger than most people I have ever met. He is the bedrock of that boy's life, and I am proud to stand with them." The lawyer sat down, frustrated. The judge called for a recess before delivering her ruling. The hour that followed was the longest of Elara's life, longer than any firefight, any tense patrol. She held Leo's hand in the hallway, both of their palms cold and clammy. Sam was silent, clinging to his father's side. Finally, they were called back into the courtroom. The judge adjusted her glasses, her face unreadable. "This is a difficult case," she began, her voice measured. "It involves the welfare of a child, which is this court's paramount concern. The petitioner, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, has expressed a genuine desire to provide for her grandson, and the court does not doubt her love for him." Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. Leo's grip on her hand tightened until it was almost painful. However, the judge continued, "The burden is on the petitioner to prove that the child's current situation is detrimental. The court has heard extensive testimony about Mr. Mackenzie's life and parenting. He has faced significant adversity with grace and determination. He has built a business to support his son. He has created a home, not just a house." The testimony of Captain Vance was particularly compelling. She is an objective third party, a person trained to assess situations with clarity, and she describes a family unit built on love, respect, and mutual support. The judge looked directly at Leo. "The court finds that Samuel Mackenzie is a happy, healthy, and well-cared-for child. The petition for custody is denied." A sound escaped Leo's throat, a half-sob, half-sigh of relief, so profound it seemed to shake the room. He pulled Sam into a crushing hug. Alara felt the tension drained from her body, leaving her weak and trembling. The judge wasn't finished. She turned a stern gaze to Eleanor. "Mrs. Vance, your grandson has a father who loves him. The best thing you can do for Samuel is to find a way to be a part of his life in a way that supports, rather than undermines, that relationship. This court encourages family reconciliation, not division." It was over. They walked out of the courthouse into the weak autumn sunlight, the three of them, hand in hand in hand. The world looked different. The colors were brighter, the air sweeter. The threat that had loomed over them for months was gone. They drove back to Alara's house, to emotionally spent 4 words. They ordered pizza, just like that first night, and ate it in the living room, sitting on the floor around the coffee table. Sam, exhausted from the stress, fell asleep with his head in Leo's lap, a slice of pizza still clutched in his hand. Leo looked at Alara over Sam's sleeping form, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You stood up there," he whispered, "in your uniform, and you fought for us. You were magnificent." "I fought for my family," Alara said simply. The word hung in the air between them, full and complete. A few weeks later, on a cold, clear night with a sky full of brilliant stars, Leo asked Alara to come for a walk in the backyard. Sam was already in bed, worn out from a day of simply being a carefree kid. The jade plant on the windowsill had grown, its branches stretching towards the light. Alara looked at it, remembering the small, serious boy who had given it to her, the boy who had changed her life. Outside, Leo stopped under the bare branches of the old oak tree. He took both of her hands in his. His were warm, rough from work. Hers fit perfectly inside them. "Ilara," he began, his voice low and earnest. "That day in the rain, I had just come from a job where the client had chewed me out for an hour over a paint color. I was tired. I was wondering how I was going to make the mortgage that month. I was questioning every decision I'd ever made. And then I saw you. A soldier, standing in the pouring rain, fighting a battle with a flat tire. And for a few minutes, I could stop thinking about my own problems and just help." He squeezed her hands. "I had no idea that pulling over would lead me here. To you. You walked into our lives, and you filled a space we didn't even know was empty. You made us whole again. You are brave, and strong, and kind, and you love my son as if he were your own." He let go of one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, simple velvet box. He didn't get down on one knee. The gesture was too formal for the profound intimacy of the moment. He just held the box out and opened it. Inside was a modest, beautiful diamond ring that caught the starlight. "Ilara Vance," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Will you make our family official? Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Ilara's face, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. She wasn't a soldier in that moment. She was just a woman, being offered the one thing she had stopped daring to hope for, a love that was steadfast, a ready-made son who owned a piece of her soul, and a future built not on dust and fear, but on solid, loving ground. She didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in the familiar, comforting scent of his flannel shirt. "Yes," she whispered, the word, a promise, a prayer, a new beginning. "Yes, Leo, 1,000 times, yes." From inside the house, unnoticed by them, a small, sleepy face peered through the kitchen window. Sam had woken up and heard voices. He saw his dad holding Ilara, saw the way they clung to each other. He saw the little box in his dad's hand, and he understood. A wide, sleepy, triumphant grin spread across his face. He tiptoed back to bed, his heart full to bursting. His dad had done it. Ilara was going to stay. They were going to be a real family. He fell back asleep, dreaming of a future that was no longer a source of fear, but a bright, endless horizon. All because of a single dad, a female soldier, and a flat tire on a rainy day.